Today, we are going to look at one of the most important rules in algebra, the laws of indices. Let's start with the first rule. When we multiply powers of the same base, we add the indices. That means, for example, we have c power of 2 multiplied by c power of 5, and this should be equal to c power of 2 plus 5, and this should be c power of 7. What about when we have three different expressions, like example b power of 3 multiplied by b power of 4 multiplied by b power of 5? What we do is just add the powers together and there should be b power of 12. Alright then, I think it's time to try some example with the numbers. Let's say we have a 2 power of 3 multiplied by 2 power of 5. What we did before, we add the powers together and this should be 2 power of 8. And this should be equal to 256. Another example, a power of m multiplied by a power of n, and this should be equal to a power of m plus n. Notice that the base stays the same. The only thing we do is to add the powers together. I think now we know how multiplications works. Let's move on and do some divisions. When we divide powers of the same base, we subtract the indices. A good example of that could be a power of 5 divided by a power of 3. What we do is the opposite of multiplications. We subtract the powers and this should be equal to a power of 2. Now, what happens when we have a fraction? Like example, m power of 7 over m power of 3. We can write that as m power of 7 divided by m power of 3. Unlike we did before, we subtract the powers and this should be equal to m power of 4. The example with the numbers work the same. We have 5 power of 7 divided by 5 power of 4. Like we did before, we subtract the powers, we have 5 power of 3 and this should be equal to 125. Now, let's make some space and let's see what we're gonna get when we have a d power of m divided by d power of n. And again, the base stays the same, but we subtract the powers. Alright, now let's try some more difficult example. The first thing we need to do, we need to add the powers together because we have multiplications, and this should be equal to x power of 14 over x power of 6. Then we subtract the powers and this should be equal to x power of 8. Now we are going to look at what happens when we raise a power to another power. And the rule says, when we raise a power to another power, you multiply the indices. A good example could be brackets a to the power of m all to the power of n, and this should be equal to a power of m multiplied by n, and this can also be written as a power of m and n. What about b power of 2 all to the power of 6? This should be equal to b power of 12. Now let's try one with more than one base inside the bracket. We have x power of 3, y power of 4 all to the power of 2. What we do, we multiply the powers and this should be equal to x power of 6 and y power of 8. And what happens when we have a fraction, like example 2x over y power of 3 all to the power of 4? What we do before, we just multiply the powers and this should be equal to 16 x power of 4 over y power of 12. Now let's look at negative powers. When we use negative powers, it means we take the reciprocal. So instead of writing a to the power of minus m, we flip it and write 1 over a to the power of m. It will work the same ways with the numbers, like for example 3 power of negative 2 should be equal to 1 over 3 power of 2, which is 1 over 9. Let's do example number 3. We have 7x to the power of negative 3, and the 7's stay the same because the negative power only apply to x, and this should be equal to 7 over x power of 3. And last example, we have a power of 2, b to negative power of 3 and c to the negative power of 1. and this should be equal to a power of 2 over b power of 3 c. To find the end root of quantity, we divide the exponents of the quantity by n. For example, the n root of the power of m is equal to the power of m divided by n. Now let's take this example. The fifth root of x squared is equal to x power of 2 over 5. What about fourth root of b? This should be equal to b power of 1 over 4. Alright, let's try some more difficult example. We have root 16 x to the power of 6, which is equal to 4x power of 6 over 2, which should be 4x power to the 3. Alright, and the last example, we have the cube root of 64, which should be equal to 64 power of 1 over 3, which can be written as number 4. Now let's see what happens when a non-zero number is raised to the power of 0. The rule says that any non-zero number raised to the power of 0 is always equal to 1. That means no matter if we have a power of 0, 8 power of 0 or 395 power of 0, it's always gonna be equal to 1. Alright, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and see you next time.